So even the worst run auction can be better than traditional sale. That is the topic of today's episode. Today, I'm going to take you through some statistics as well that are just absolutely staggering in each individual marketplace. I'm horrible at, not overselling something, but I find these really, really engaging, these statistics that I take you through for the western part of North America. We've gone through and done a few studies in perspective to price reductions, days on market in individual marketplaces. So hopefully that information is very, very helpful for a great deal of our audience. A lot of our audience is based on the west coast of North America. So you'll be able to use this in your listing presentations, in your educational process, everything like that. So hopefully that's really engaging. But also I take you through how a traditional sale in today's marketplace, if it's not sold pretty quickly, you're basically dragging the seller's expectations through the mud. I believe that traditional real estate, when there's a price reduction, is that there's a public declaration that your seller's expectations have changed, and that loses you complete leverage. We talk about how auction takes that in behind closed doors and allows the purifying process of that price or that public price that they put on the property. If it doesn't sell before or on the day of auction, how ultimately it purifies that listing at the end. Hopefully you enjoy. Hopefully it's beneficial. Thank you. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Okay, another episode of Rethink Real Estate. Thanks for joining us today, guys, as we discuss price reductions. And I want to talk about how the auction process actually removes the seller's expectations away to closed doors, because I really do believe that a price reduction is a public declaration of seller's expectations changing. And I want to talk about how the auction process certainly works by putting that behind closed doors and making sure that it protects the integrity of the sellers, it protects the integrity of the property, but it also gives you a better understanding of ultimately the worst run auction can be far superior than any traditional element of real estate in the sense of the reputational protection that it gives a property and your client as well. So I want to go through a few little statistics that people might not know about, and I want to give you an example of why we're going through this today, because the recent marketplace has certainly made some different changes that a lot of people believe that the marketplace is still moving really, really quickly, and it is for certain properties, certain price points, but then there's a great deal of other properties that are sitting there stuck on the market. And a lot of that is because sellers bought them over the last 3 or 4 years and paid a lot more than what they're able to get in today's marketplace, with interest rates being higher and things along those lines. So I want to talk about how we need to protect the fundamentals of our properties that are out there on the marketplace and how auction can be a very big proponent of that. But the first thing that I want to go through is some statistics that we're seeing out there in the market, because we've got to use these statistics to engage with agents about auction all over North America and engage with our own network as well about auction as well. And one of the first ones that I want to share with you is that on average, if a property has one price reduction, there is a 71% chance that it will need 2 more before going into escrow. I thought that was absolutely staggering that when we figured that out. Okay, so let me go through that one more time. Now, predominant marketplaces that we're basing our study from, okay, is Southern California, Northern California. Okay, we're doing it also Oregon, and we're doing Washington. Okay, they're the primary marketplaces that we're looking into from a statistic perspective. Okay, so then that's where most of our auction business is done. So it might be different in other territories, but I will say this again, and I really think it's incredibly relevant. Okay, is that there is a 71% chance that if a property has one price reduction, that it will need 2 more before going into escrow. Isn't that amazing? We're all thinking that, oh no, property's flying and whatever it is. And yes, some of it is. But if it doesn't, what's the first thing that we do? We do a price reduction. Now, let's talk about the price reduction process at the moment that we're seeing, because the average price reduction is taking between 3 and 4 weeks. It's actually longer than what it was pre-COVID, because this is something that we always tracked in the marketplaces that we were operating in when it came to auction, because we're always putting auction versus traditional. And this was one of the major things that we would always track. It was taking 2 or 3 weeks pre-COVID for a property to go through a price reduction. Part of that is just efficiency of the real estate, is lack of efficiency in the real estate industry. Most agents in most of our marketplaces only do 2 or 3 listings a year, so they have no idea how to actually do a price reduction, when you should be asking for a price reduction reduction within the first 14 days of a property being on the marketplace. But the interesting part of all of this is that it was taking between 2 and 3 weeks. It's taking between 3 and 4 now is the average in all of these marketplaces. It's very close to each other, okay? That when that first price reduction happens, it's usually taking the longest amount of time. But then the first price reduction comes. What is the problem with that first price reduction? It's typically not enough. It's typically the smallest price reduction out of any of the price reductions that happen, because us as agents typically go in there and do the softball approach. Oh, we just need to provoke the marketplace a little bit more. I really do believe that it's still going to be a great sale price. We just need to make a change in the MLS and blah, 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 whatever your justification is for doing a price reduction in the first degree, right? When we really should be considering at that point, we should be talking to them about the auction process and saying, hey, look, there's this process that I can use that you don't have to reduce your price. You can obviously just use the auction process in order for us to cast the net further. It doesn't mean you're reducing your expectation. It attracts a different audience, blah, 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 blah. But getting back to the price reduction thing, the first price reduction is typically the lowest amount. So then by that time, you're sort of behind the eight ball already. So if you were to look at the Zillow statistics, is that a property, sort of the progression of a property after the first 7 days starts to go down from an interest perspective. Then once you do a price reduction, only actually ticks back up for 3 days, and then it starts to descend again from the number of hits that you get. So if you were looking to run the most efficient process possible from a traditional standpoint, first 7 days goes past should be a price reduction, then 3 days after should be your next one, then 3 days after should be your next one, to keep the audience sort of captured, but no one ever does that. Okay, so leading back to this is that the thing that we look at now is that then all of a sudden you're 3 or 4 weeks down the path, you've done your first price reduction, it's not enough. So then your next one comes, and your next one is also between 3 and 4 weeks. The second price reduction on an average on the west coast of North America, okay, is usually 3 or 4 weeks as well. I was staggered to see this because I would have thought that it would have been quicker, but it isn't, because you've already asked them for one price reduction. The likelihood of coming back and asking for another is pretty tough. Okay, and most people avoid that conflict when really it's the best thing you could possibly do for your sellers. And at that point, then it is a bigger price reduction, but at that point you're dealing with damaged goods, and then you have to do another, and then that one's a bit more drastic. And then by that time, okay, it's probably likely going to end up in escrow if you can get enough reductions, if it hasn't expired already, or the seller hasn't fired you, or whatever it may be. So again, that statistic, okay, 71% of properties that do one price reduction need to do two more in order to go into escrow. So where I'm going with this, guys, use auction, or, okay, is make sure that your first price reduction is robust, okay? Don't let them do, like, if they're not going to reduce it by a substantial amount, just say, no, there's no point. Just leave it on the marketplace for a period of time then until you're ready to do a bigger price reduction, okay? The next thing that I want to go through with you as well is average days on marketplace. The average days on marketplace at the moment, interesting, again, in those same marketplace and those same territories, because we actually do an outreach program to people to see if they're interested in using auction. Because if a property hits 21 days on the marketplace, you have a 77% chance of that property getting to 60 days on market. Let me go through that one more time. Okay, if a property hits 21 days on the market, you have a 77% chance of that property seeing 60 days on market. That was incredible statistic to find out. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited about that because I'm like, oh, that is opportunity right there for people to actually engage with the auction process. There's no question about it. Okay. However, that said, is that number used to be a lot higher, being the days on market before there was this definite engagement of, hey, it's going to be on there for a while. So one of the numbers that we used to track was 90 days on the marketplace, because pre-COVID, okay, is that people were used to that 45-day mark where the honeymoon period was over. Now, if you were to track the number of weeks in a process, so first week is honeymoon period with your sellers, they love you. Second week is that, okay, everything's going good. Third week is we're ready to move now. Let's go. Okay, where's my offers? Fourth week, okay, are we done yet? Fifth week is that, well, you are the villain. Okay, so within that 45-day stretch is that it usually became that. We're seeing at the moment that you become villainized as an agent if it gets to about 21 days on the market, because the market has been moved so quickly, expectations have changed, and you know it's a faster moving real estate economy, or it was. So therefore, people's expectations are that it stayed the same. But this was one of the things that really staggered me, is that how much quicker that is. That if 21 days on the market, you have a 77% likelihood that it will see 60 days on the market. So then we looked at it a little bit further. We're like, okay, what's the likelihood if it hit 14 days on the market that it's on the market within 60 days? It doesn't go down much from a percentage perspective. It's only 62%. So 62% likelihood that your property will hit 60 days on market if it hits 14 days on the market. I was staggered with that. Now, there's individual micro markets that are actually even worse. So if you look at the San Francisco area, not the whole Bay Area itself, you just look at San Francisco itself, if a property hits 21 days on the market, you have an 88% chance that it will be on the marketplace in 60 days' time or hit 60 days on the market. So it is different in every area. We've just used some of the averages in a lot of these marketplaces. There'll be differences in price points and differences in all over the place. But where I'm leading to this is that in an economy where people, if they were to ask you a question, what do you think the market is doing? You would be insulting their intelligence by trying to actually guess, because it is a guess at the moment. I was listening to Bigger Pockets the other day, which is a podcast. It's a good podcast. It's from an investment perspective. And these are very big flippers that have very different, very big views over all of the real estate marketplace. Like, these are some of the biggest flippers in all of North America, doing very, very large portfolios, like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 doors of their own individual portfolios. And obviously, as you can appreciate, they track the marketplace quite close because they have a lot of exposure when they're flipping. They have, 20, 30, 40, 50, $100 million out at any one time. If the marketplace was to change in any way, shape, or form from a small percentage perspective, $100 million, 10% change, it's $10 million. That's a lot of money. So where I'm going with this is that there were 4 different people on that podcast, all of similar size from their businesses, which were just astronomical. All 4 of them had a different answer of what they think the economy is going to do. Some were saying that the Fed's going to continue to raise the rates. Others going to say that it's going to be on pause. The one thing that they were all succinct with, however, is that they believe that real estate prices will stay stagnant for up to 5 years. I thought that was an interesting part of this as well. And it should be something that we should be telling our sellers. So where I'm going with this, though, is that the poorest run auction is still far more effective when it comes to the way that you can protect the integrity of a property. I want to talk about a traditional sale. So say that a seller wants $1 million, that is the traditional list price. If you think about it, 3 or 4 weeks goes past, you do a small price reduction. If your seller wants $1 million, let's say that you're probably going to list it at $1,075,000, maybe $1,001,000, if you're really good, maybe $1,049,000, okay, whatever it ultimately is. Some people are going to try that below market value strategy, which is going to get you nowhere, going to have a great deal of egg on your face when it doesn't sell within the 14 to 7 day window of offers, whatever it is, okay? I do believe that there's some really silly stuff that I'm seeing out there at the moment. However, let's say seller wants $1 million, you price the property, I'm just going to say at $1,079,000, okay? That's the list price on the property. Now, 3 or 4 weeks goes past. I hope that it's not that long, but let's use the averages. 3 or 4 weeks goes past. Smallest price reduction doesn't really do anything. You might be able to get them. I don't think you'll get them to do a $79,000 price reduction. You're probably still going to be over $1 million, okay? But maybe let's say that you're good. Let's give benefit of the doubt. Let's say you go to $999,000, okay? Now, that's probably not going to move the needle overly, okay? Because at the end of the day, people are probably searching at $1 million, have probably seen your property already. Maybe it might be a barrier that you get more people in. Now, 3 or 4 weeks goes past. Now, if you've done one price reduction, that property does not get that bump of interest and doesn't sell within inside 7 days of that, good luck. You're going to be on the marketplace for up to 60 days now. So the next price reduction comes 3 or 4 weeks later if we use the average as well. Let's say we use just so that the math is easy for me, that's 2 months by the time you've had a second price reduction. Property's lost complete steam. The next price reduction, same average, okay? Because at this point, the seller basically is red in the face and doesn't like you at this point. So say that it takes 3 months in order to get to the point, and then you've got to go through and close escrow. That's, we're talking 4 to 5, maybe even 6 months before people see the end result. And what you've done is drag that property's reputation through the dirt the entire time. So what does auction do? This is one beauty that I love about auction. Let me give it to you in an analogy that you've got to have a bit of a strong stomach to sort of deal with, okay, is that let's say I love steak. I love going to steak restaurants. I think it's a great experience, and I love steak, okay? Who doesn't? Well, probably vegans and vegetarians that are listening, sorry. So this might be a little bit harsh for them. However, I love steak. There's a steakhouse here in Laguna Beach called Solani's. We go there. We've had a few parties there. It's fantastic. Okay, highly recommend it. Now they come out. My steak comes out. I ask for it medium rare. Comes out perfectly cooked. It's got a little truffle butter on it. A little mushroom on top of it. It's beautiful, right? I'm not going to talk about the mac and cheese sides and the gorging of myself that I do. However, perfectly cooked, beautiful, ready to rock and roll. I eat it. Now, what do you think my appetite would be like if they brought the cow into the dining room, they chopped the head off the cow, skinned the cow, cut the meat up, and then cooked it? That is basically what is happening when you're doing price reductions on a property. You are dragging that seller's expectations through the dirt. You are making a public declaration that ultimately their expectations have changed. You're losing all leverage in negotiation. So how does auction help? Let's say that the seller wants $1 million. You list the property to $1,079,000 traditionally, because that's a great deal of the time. A lot of what our agents are doing is that going out traditionally first, saying to a seller that, hey, take the low-hanging fruit. Let's see if we can get anybody just to grab that offer, and it's a process of elimination, or put an offer in and it's at the price that you're comfortable with. Now, if that's not the case, instead of going back and doing a price reduction, in 14 days we'll come back to you. We can then convert it through to this process called auction. Okay. Now, what that does is it takes your expectations, your $1,079,000 or your $1 million, and it puts it behind closed doors. So now, as a non-disclosed reserve price, so our pricing process in the auction process works that a seller sets a reserve price at the very beginning of the listing. Now, any Australians that are listening, usually you set the reserve price later. We do this at the very beginning so that we can track this all the way through to understand what movement we are getting on the seller's expectation front, so that we lead into auction day and we know whether or not we have a match in the market or we don't. And we know how much work needs to happen. So they set a non-disclosed reserve price at the very beginning. Only the listing team and the auction team know what that is. Now, even if we're presented with an offer under or over, the seller's not obligated to sell, but their expectations can be adjusted in writing at any point in time. They can be adjusted in writing at any single point in time. And that fluctuation can happen behind closed doors, because the whole time we've got a list price on the property as a bidding to start from price, a number that's much, much lower than what the seller wants and what the property is worth. So therefore, there's no fluctuation, and it's capturing the entire marketplace and allowing the market to find its own feet, allowing the seller's expectations to not have to be publicly out there, and engaging a great deal more people, because it's not discriminating anybody based on price. Again, I've said this before, death, taxes, sellers want too much for their property in the beginning, but they shouldn't be punished for that. Their reputation of their property shouldn't be punished for that. And you as an agent that just says, yes, okay, and then puts it at a silly list price should not be helping them do that either. That's where auction ultimately helps. Now, I really do believe in a process of elimination, of letting them go out at their original list price, because then auction is it's a tool that can be blamed, and we'll talk about that on another episode as well. But where I'm going with this, hopefully you've seen that this is an opportunity in order to use auction as an opportunity to make sure that you're not dragging your seller through the mud, because you're protecting that seller's reputation, you're protecting that property's reputation. And that is why even the most ineffective auction, in your view, that doesn't work, so to speak, that doesn't sell at auction or on auction day or with bidders or whatever it is, even though that is not the catalyst to a successful auction. The catalyst to the successful auction is a seller's expectation being adjusted to market value enough that it sells either very quickly before, on auction day, or very quickly after. You can list the property at an effective list price without multiple price reductions. So let's say that this seller doesn't sell it before auction or on the day of auction. They can then choose to put a list price back on the property. Now, that's probably going to be greatly reduced from where they originally were, because they've listened to the feedback, you've taken them through that process, and now it's being cleansed. Think about auction process as a water filtration system. Mud goes in at the top, it comes out purified drinking water at the bottom with a perfect list price that can go on the marketplace. Hopefully this makes sense to you guys. If it doesn't, reach out for any clarification. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Rethink Real Estate. So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.